Hi guys, this is gonna sound like a really weird topic for a video on a YouTube about wedding planning, but it's something that I can't get out of my mind. And so today I want to talk about sexism and the wedding industry and sexism while planning your wedding. So please stay with me. And then if you agree with me or disagree with me, please tell me your thoughts on this in the comments, because this is something that I just feel like I've struggled with for a while, and I would love to know what you think about this. I started planning my wedding about a year ago, and I started a blog at the same time to sort of document the whole thing. But I find myself, whenever I'm talking about my wedding with other people, or talking about my blog or my YouTube channel, which is really new, that I feel sort of uncomfortable or even embarrassed or indulgent for talking about my own wedding. And I know that a lot of people don't feel this way at all about their wedding planning. They're really happy to talk about it, as it should be. It's an exciting experience and all that. I also thought I might feel this way because I have some background in corporate event planning, and I just thought it would be kind of natural to talk about event planning. But I think maybe because I'm not a very traditional person, I found so far that a lot of the wedding books and advice online and things like this for wedding planning don't jive with how I am in my everyday life. So it just seems like wedding world itself is very, very traditional and kind of exists outside of the world, or at least like the world how I live it. And so I felt kind of uncomfortable trying to find my place as someone planning my wedding who doesn't feel comfortable talking about weddings and planning a wedding how other people are planning their weddings. I don't know if this makes sense. I also read an amazing event planning book recently that really stuck with me. It's Priya Parker's The Art of Gathering. And she says that a lot of the traditions we have at events, traditional events, no longer serve the original purpose that they were made for. And so if we continue to do these traditions where they're not really serving a purpose anymore, they become just like empty gestures. So before we just kind of accept that we're going to do certain things at our weddings, I think that it would be better for us to critically think about each one of those rituals. Why are we really doing this? Is this really important to us? And sometimes when we do that, it reveals that a certain ritual is kind of outdated and sexist. Now, if you just want to do a tradition because you think it's fun and you don't feel like critically thinking about it, that's okay too. Don't worry, just do the tradition you want to do. But if you're like me and you're feeling like some anxiety or you're feeling anxious about doing certain traditions, this might be the underlying reason, is that you are realizing subconsciously that there's just no purpose for it anymore, and so it feels kind of empty to you. So I hope that this video helps you. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if I'm just alone in thinking like this. And I really don't want this to come off as sounding judgmental or anything. I don't want to judge anybody who wants to do any kind of traditional things in their wedding planning. This is totally up to you, and that's what feminism is to me, is that you have the choice. You always have the choice to do what you want to do, to get married or not, to take your husband's name or not, to do whatever kind of wedding tradition, bouquet toss or not. It's totally up to you, and being able to have that choice is everything. I'm more talking about the system in general and how sometimes maybe you feel like you don't have a choice. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of voices out there in wedding world that want to do weddings how I want to do them, that want to question some of the traditions within weddings. And I know those people exist, I just haven't seen a lot of it. So today I just want to kind of like point out some of these quote sexist things or outdated traditions that I see as possibly being a little bit problematic, and just sort of walk through my thoughts on these and process them. And maybe this will help me have kind of a breakthrough with how I want to continue my own wedding planning. If you've seen any of my other videos on this channel, I'm really into budget wedding planning. I want to have as cheap a wedding as possible while still having an amazing time and still having the guests who I want there. And I care a lot about making it eco-friendly. So questioning traditions and not doing things just because is all part of this, in my view. So let's start with taking your husband's last name. I think something like 80% of American women take their husband's last name. It's really, really common to take your husband's last name in the US, and this is something that I grew up thinking was just like normal or a given, I guess. And then I traveled to other countries, I talked to other people, and I realized that this isn't like across the board a thing that people do. And gay couples, when they get married, they have to negotiate this. Are they both gonna change their last names to something completely different? Is one of them gonna take the other's last name? And this is a good point, is when we see gay couples getting married, heterosexual couples are kind of faced with the sort of obvious expectations that one half of the couple will do something without questioning it. And this is super controversial, guys, so if you disagree with me, just let me know in the comments below. So these days, I think that is starting to change a little bit. People are more and more taking other options into consideration when it comes to changing their names. I'm not saying that taking your husband's last name is sexist. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I think I feel a little bit uncomfortable about is that expectation, where it feels like you don't have a choice as a woman. Not everybody, but for many people it feels like a given. They feel like people are going to judge them or maybe even get angry with them if they don't change their last names to their husband's last names. Or it can manifest in much more innocent ways, like you'll be gifted things with your husband's last name on them without you having said that you were going to change your last name. People are just like, here's a new welcome mat for your home with your husband's last name on it. And if you weren't planning to change your last name, that can feel a little bit like, oh, okay. Honestly, I did go back and forth with this myself for my own name. I didn't know what to do, and in the end, I am going to keep my own name, I'm almost certain, but that's not going to be the case for everyone, and everyone needs to do what's right for them, and that includes feeling like you have a choice, feeling like there's no pressure, no judgment, you can do what you want to do in terms of taking your husband's last name, hyphenating your name, not changing your name at all, whatever it is. Now, I think it's important to point out that sexism in the wedding industry or sexism while planning your wedding doesn't only negatively affect women, it also hurts men. And we see this in things like the expensive engagement ring. So expecting men to have to pay for a really expensive engagement ring is pretty unfair, I think. Maybe we don't like to think of it this way, but it is unfair to expect the man to make that financial sacrifice. And on that same note, things like expecting the man to propose. Probably something like 99% of heterosexual couples have the man propose to the woman. And this expectation is just like everywhere in our culture, in movies and TV shows. It's expected that the man will do the proposing. And that's something that's not really fair, right? I just wish it was looked at as a little bit more acceptable or normal to have the woman propose to the man, and that it wasn't like such a weird thing. On that same note, the whole idea of having the man asking the father's permission in order to get married. This is something that we have to really admit when we look at this closely, that it is quite sexist. So first of all, there's no equivalent of this for the woman. The woman doesn't really go to her boyfriend's parents and ask them for a blessing or permission before she agrees to the marriage. It kind of goes back to olden days when there was a transaction happening here and the man, the future husband, and the father needed to have some kind of conversation about the woman's life. So personally, I would say either get rid of this tradition altogether or make it a little bit more equal so that both people in the couple go to either set of each other's parents and ask for blessing. Maybe permission is like a creepy word here, but ask for each other's blessing going forward. Something that's bothered me a bit in all this is how women are assumed to do all or most of the wedding planning, which is fine. Usually I think women do most of the planning, which is why we're advertised to so much and all that. But if men want to help with the wedding planning, we should let them, right? We shouldn't act like this is an amazing thing when men show up to a vendor meeting, for example, or something like that. It's their wedding too. They should be involved. And it shouldn't be like a miraculous thing for men to show up and help with wedding planning. And I just want to talk about the wedding party real quick. It seems like people are still having very gender divided wedding parties where there are bridesmaids and groomsmen. Not a lot of people are mixing these up, despite the fact that people have friends of different genders. So I really think that the gender divided wedding party is pretty outdated, and that we will start to see this fade away and people will have more and more mixed gender bridal parties or wedding parties going forward. But as it is now, if you look at the average costs of groomsmen versus bridesmaids, bridesmaids tend to spend a lot more money on weddings, which is really unfair because they've got to spend money on hair and makeup, and a lot of times more accessories than the groomsmen do. So being a bridesmaid is usually more expensive than being a groomsman. Alright guys, I could probably talk about this topic all day. I have at least 6 more items on my list here, but why don't you tell me? You tell me, what other wedding traditions or rituals you find sexist. Drop them in the comments below. I would love to read them. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Bye, see you next time.